He was one of the all-time great bebop saxophonists. If you were looking for dynamic swing, great melodies based on the chord changes, he couldn't be beat. Who was Sonny Stitt? Here on Big on Bebop. He was born Edward Hammond Boatner Jr. on February 2, 1924 in Boston, Massachusetts, and later adopted the stage name Sonny Stitt. His musical background included his father, a baritone singer, composer, and college music professor. His brother was a classically trained pianist, and his mother was a piano teacher. He studied piano at age 7, then the clarinet and alto sax. He would eventually play tenor and baritone and was equally fluent on all saxes. He was placed for adoption in 1924 by his father and adopted by the Stitt family in Saginaw, Michigan. He later began calling himself Sonny. While in high school in Saginaw, he played in the Lynn Frank Band, a popular swing band. During the 1940s, he played alto saxophone as a member of the Tiny Bradshaw's big band. Then Billy Eckstine's big band with Gene Ammons and Dexter Gordon, and then Dizzy Gillespie's big band. In 1943, Stitt met Charlie Parker. Each was surprised to find that the other had developed virtually identical styles. Stitt claims to have never heard Bird play before that time. Stitt was a leader of Bebop Boys and Galaxy in 1946 and 1948 respectively. He became a key figure in the New York City bebop movement. When playing tenor saxophone, Stitt seemed to break free from some of the criticism that he was imitating Parker's style and began to develop a far more distinctive sound. In the 1950s, he played with Horace Parlan, Bud Powell, and Eddie Lockjaw Davis, recording a number of sides for Prestige Records as well as albums for Argo, Verve, and Roost. In 1952, Stitt played with pianist Jimmy Jones. In 1953, he performed orchestral music with Johnny Richards. In 1955, under Quincy Jones's guidance, he played up-tempos and ballads such as My Funny Valentine and Stardust. In the same year, performed Afterwards and There Will Never Be Another You with Hank Jones. He played with Dolo Coker in 1957. Stitt joined Miles Davis briefly in 1960, recording with the Davis Quintet only in live settings on the tour of 1960. Live at Stockholm, which also featured Wynton Kelly, Jimmy Cobb, and Paul Chambers. Miles fired Stitt due to the excessive drinking habit he had developed and replaced him with Hank Mobley. Later in the 1960s, Stitt paid homage to Charlie Parker on the album Stitt Plays Bird, which features Jim Hall on guitar. Stitt recorded several times with his friend Gene Ammons. These recordings by these two saxophonists are regarded as some of both Ammons and Stitt's best work. He recorded with fellow tenor saxophonist Booker Ervin in 1964 on the Soul People album. Stitt also recorded with Duke Ellington and alumnus Paul Gonzalez in 1963 for Impulse. Around that time, he appeared regularly at Ronnie Scott's in London. In the 1970s, Stitt slowed his recording output slightly, but in 1972 produced another classic, Tune Up, which was and still is regarded by many jazz critics as some of his best work. In 1971, he managed to record 4 albums: Turn It On, You Talk That Talk, with Gene Ammons, Just the Way It Was, Live at the Left Bank, and Black Vibrations. Stitt's productivity dropped in the 1970s due to his alcoholism. He drank heavily after giving up heroin in the late 1950s, and the abuse was beginning to take its toll. Stitt joined the all-star group The Giants of Jazz, which also featured Art Blakey, Dizzy Gillespie, Thelonious Monk, Kai Winding, and bassist Al McKibben. A rejuvenated Stitt also toured with Red Holloway in the late 1970s. In 1975, he performed with Ron Burton, Major Hawley, and drummer John Lewis at the Village Vanguard. In 1981, Stitt performed with George DeVivier and Jimmy Cobb. 6 weeks before his death, Stitt recorded 2 last consecutive sessions, which were with George DeVivier, Jimmy Cobb, Bill Hardman, and either John Mance or Walter Davis Jr. on piano. In 1982, Stitt was diagnosed with cancer and died on July 22nd in Washington, D.C. Sonny Stitt's contributions to jazz music are significant, and his recordings continue to be studied and admired by musicians and jazz enthusiasts alike. Sonny Stitt, a legendary jazz saxophonist.